The afternoon sun cast long shadows through the windows of May's childhood home as she sorted through her grandmother's belongings. It had been 3 weeks since the funeral, but the pain still felt fresh. Her grandmother had been the center of their family for as long as anyone could remember, the quiet strength that held everyone together through good times and bad. The small bedroom was exactly as her grandmother had left it. The faded floral wallpaper, the handmade quilt on the bed, and the old wooden dresser with its slightly crooked drawer. May ran her fingers along the smooth wood, remembering how her grandmother would sit at this dresser every morning and brush her silver hair exactly 100 times, never more, never less. "Take your time with the things that matter," her grandmother used to say. Those words echoed in May's mind as she carefully folded each piece of clothing, each memory, and placed them in cardboard boxes labeled "Donate." The rest of the family had already taken what they wanted. Her uncle had the old record player, her cousin the collection of vinyl records, her mother the wedding band and the small jade pendant her grandmother never took off. May had insisted on being the one to clear out the bedroom. She needed this time alone with what remained of her grandmother's life. When she pulled open the bottom drawer of the dresser, May found neatly folded scarves, handkerchiefs, and beneath them, a small wooden box she had never seen before. The dark cherry wood was polished to a shine, with delicate carvings of birds in flight decorating its lid. It was locked, but a tiny key was taped to its underside. Her hands trembled slightly as she turned the key in the lock. The lid opened with a soft creak. Inside, she found a stack of yellowed photographs, newspaper clippings, and on top of everything, a sealed envelope with her name written on it in her grandmother's elegant handwriting. "For May, to be opened after I am gone." She sat on the edge of the bed, the afternoon light warming her back as she carefully broke the seal. The letter was dated just 3 months ago, when her grandmother must have known her time was growing short, though she had never let on to the family how ill she truly was. "My dearest May," the letter began. "If you are reading this, then I have finally found the courage to tell you my story, though I could not find that courage while I was still alive. Forgive an old woman her weakness." May's breath caught in her throat. The handwriting was shaky but determined, covering both sides of 3 pages. She leaned back against the pillows that still held the faint scent of her grandmother's lavender perfume and began to read. "I was born Li Min in a small village outside of Shanghai in 1942, not in Hong Kong as I have always told everyone. My early years were spent during the most turbulent time in our country's history. By the time I was 7, I had seen things no child should see." May paused. Her grandmother had always said she was born in Hong Kong in 1945. It was a detail so fundamental to her identity that no one had ever questioned it. Why would she have changed something so basic about herself? The letter continued, "My father was a teacher, a man who believed in ideas that were dangerous during those times. When I was 8 years old, they came for him in the night. My mother woke me, pressed a small bag into my hands, and told me I must go with my aunt to Hong Kong immediately. Forget your name," she whispered as she held me for the last time. "Forget where you came from. It is the only way to stay safe." Tears blurred May's vision. She had to stop reading for a moment, overcome by the weight of what she was learning. Her great-grandfather hadn't died of tuberculosis as the family story went. And her grandmother's journey hadn't been a simple one of immigration for better opportunities. "I became Chen Li Hua in Hong Kong. My aunt and her husband raised me as their own. They were good people who gave me a good life. When I met your grandfather at university, I had been Chen Li Hua for so long that Li Min felt like a dream I once had. We fell in love, moved to America, and built our life here. I never spoke of my early years, not even to him." May brushed away tears. Her grandfather had passed away 12 years ago. Had he really never known this secret? "Last year, when the letter came from China, I nearly burned it without opening it. But something stopped me. Inside was a photograph of my parents that I had never seen before and information about distant relatives who had been searching for me for decades. They found me through one of those ancestry websites your cousin is so fond of. May reached into the box and found the photograph. A serious-looking man in wire-rimmed glasses stood beside a beautiful young woman holding a small child. On the back, faded characters spelled out names and a date, 1947. I have struggled all year with whether to contact them, whether to tell all of you the truth. In the end, my courage failed me. But I cannot bear the thought of this story dying with me, of the truth about who I am vanishing as if Li Min never existed at all. The last page contained an address in Shanghai and the names of people who were apparently May's distant cousins. They are your family too, her grandmother had written. What you do with this information is your choice. I only ask that you understand why an 8-year-old girl kept a promise to forget, and why an old woman finally needed to remember. May carefully folded the letter and returned it to its envelope. The sun had dipped lower, bathing the room in golden light. She looked around at the half-packed boxes, at the life her grandmother had built from the ashes of the one that was taken from her. In that moment, sitting in the fading light of day, May made a decision. Her grandmother's story would not end here, in this quiet bedroom. It had only just begun. That night, May couldn't sleep. She sat at her kitchen table, the wooden box open before her, its contents spread across the surface. The photographs, newspaper clippings, and the letter formed a map of a life she never knew existed. Her grandmother, not Chen Li Hua from Hong Kong, but Li Min from Shanghai, had lived a double life for over 70 years. May reached for her phone several times to call her mother but stopped herself each time. This secret wasn't hers alone to share. Her grandmother had entrusted it to her specifically. There must have been a reason for that. Outside, the spring rain tapped gently against the windows, creating a soothing rhythm that contrasted with the storm of emotions inside her. She picked up one of the newspaper clippings. It was yellowed with age, the Chinese characters faded but still legible. The headline mentioned a crackdown on counter-revolutionary intellectuals in 1950. Was her great-grandfather among them? The article didn't mention names, just numbers. Why me? May whispered to the empty kitchen. Why tell me and not Mom? As if in answer, she noticed a small, folded piece of paper that had been stuck to the back of another photograph. She carefully separated them and unfolded it. It was a note, much more recent than the other documents. You always asked the most questions as a child, her grandmother had written. You were never satisfied with simple answers. Of all my grandchildren, you are the one who sees with her heart. May smiled through her tears. It was true. Growing up, she had been the family historian, always begging for stories, always wanting to know the why behind everything. Her grandmother had indulged her curiosity with tales of Hong Kong in the 1950s, of meeting her grandfather at university, of coming to America with nothing but 2 suitcases and big dreams. All those stories, were they lies? No, May decided. They were just stories that started in the middle, with the first chapters torn out. The next morning, May called in sick to work. She spent the day researching online, trying to piece together what life would have been like for a child in China during those years. The more she read, the more she understood her grandmother's silence. Those who escaped the turmoil of that time often did so by erasing their past completely. By afternoon, she had made up her mind. She found the address in Shanghai that her grandmother had included in the letter and wrote an email. Her Chinese writing was poor, another regret now, so she wrote in English and used an online translator to check her work. My name is May Chen. I am the granddaughter of Li Min, who became Chen Li Hua. I have recently learned of our connection and would like to know more about our family history. She hesitated before hitting send, her finger hovering over the button. Once she sent this, there was no going back. The stone would be dropped into the pond, and the ripples would touch everyone in her family. Was that what her grandmother wanted? Or had she simply wanted May to know the truth, to keep it as her own private knowledge? The note came back to her, "You see with your heart." Maybe that was her answer. Her grandmother trusted her to know what to do with the truth. She pressed send. 3 days later, she returned to her grandmother's house. Her mother was there, sorting through the kitchen items. "I didn't expect to see you today," her mother said, looking up from a box of teacups. "I thought you were done with the bedroom." "Almost," May said. "Just a few more things to go through." Her mother nodded and went back to wrapping the delicate porcelain in newspaper. May watched her for a moment. Did she look like her grandmother? Like the woman in the photograph who must be her great-grandmother? May had always been told she had her grandmother's eyes. Whose eyes had her grandmother had? "Mom," May said slowly, "did Grandma ever talk to you about her childhood? Before Hong Kong?" Her mother paused, a teacup suspended in her hands. "There was no before Hong Kong. She was born there." "Why do you ask?" The lie came easily to her grandmother, even with her own daughter. Or perhaps especially with her own daughter, whom she wanted to protect from a painful history. "No reason," May said. "Just wondering." Back in the bedroom, May opened the wooden box again. She had brought it home with her but returned it today, feeling that it belonged here among her grandmother's things, at least for now. She took out the photograph of her grandmother's parents and studied it closely. Her great-grandfather looked stern in his academic's glasses, but there was a gentleness to his expression, a slight curl at the corners of his mouth that hinted at a ready smile. Her great-grandmother stood tall and proud beside him, one hand resting protectively on little Li Min's shoulder. They looked like people who had dreams for their daughter, dreams that had nothing to do with forgetting them. May's phone chimed with an email notification. Her heart jumped when she saw it was a response from Shanghai. With trembling fingers, she opened it. The message was brief but warm. "We have waited so long to hear from Li Min's family. My father, who is Li Min's cousin, has thought of her every day for 70 years. We have so many stories to share with you. Are you able to call or video chat?" Attached was a photograph of an elderly man surrounded by his family, 3 generations gathered around him. He held a faded photograph in his hands, and even through the small screen of her phone, May could see it was the same image she now held in her hands. Tears blurred her vision. Somewhere on the other side of the world, another family had been keeping her grandmother's memory alive in a different way. They had never forgotten Li Min, even when Li Min had to forget herself. May looked up to see her mother standing in the doorway, watching her with concern. "May? What's wrong? What is that?" The moment of truth had arrived sooner than she expected. May took a deep breath and held out the photograph of her grandmother's parents. "Mom, there's something Grandma wanted me to tell you. It's about who she really was." May's mother took the photograph with hesitant hands, as if it might crumble at her touch. Her eyes narrowed as she studied the faces, strangers who should have been familiar. "I don't understand," she said, looking up at May. "Who are these people?" May gestured to the bed. "You might want to sit down, Mom." The afternoon light was fading now, casting long shadows across the room as May handed her mother the letter. She watched her mother's face as she read, the confusion that turned to disbelief, then shock, and finally a deep, profound sadness that made her look suddenly older. "Shanghai," her mother whispered, the paper trembling in her hands. She was from Shanghai, not Hong Kong. "My whole life." Her voice trailed off as she continued reading. May sat quietly beside her, giving her the space to absorb the truth. Outside, a car door slammed, and children's voices drifted up from the street. Life went on, unaware that in this small bedroom, a family's history was being rewritten. When her mother finished reading, she folded the letter carefully and handed it back to May. There were no tears, just a distant look in her eyes, as if she was searching her memories for clues she might have missed. "Did you know?" May asked gently. "Did you ever suspect anything?" Her mother shook her head slowly. There were things that didn't quite add up. Small inconsistencies in her stories. The way she would sometimes look startled if someone mentioned certain events from Chinese history. How she refused to talk about her parents beyond saying they died when she was young. She sighed. "But no, I never suspected anything like this." She picked up the box and began to go through its contents, the newspaper clippings, the photographs, the small mementos of a life abandoned but never completely forgotten. She couldn't even tell her own husband, her mother said, more to herself than to May. "Your grandfather died never knowing who he really married." Or maybe he did know, May suggested. Maybe he knew and understood why she needed to keep it secret. Her mother looked up, a new thought crossing her face. "The nightmares. Your grandfather used to tell me that she had terrible nightmares when they first got married. She would cry out in her sleep in Chinese, not Cantonese, which is what they spoke in Hong Kong, but something else. He always said it was just the stress of adjusting to America." She shook her head. It was Mandarin. She was remembering. They sat in silence for a while, both lost in their own thoughts. The wooden box between them held the fragments of a life kept hidden for decades, a history they were only now beginning to understand. "I've contacted them," May said finally. "The family in Shanghai. They've responded." Her mother's head snapped up. "You've what?" "I sent them an email," May explained, showing her mother the response on her phone. "They've been looking for grandmother for 70 years. They never forgot her." Her mother took the phone, her expression unreadable as she looked at the photo of the elderly man holding the same picture they now had. "That's her cousin?" "Yes, according to the email. They want to talk to us." "I don't know if I'm ready for that," her mother said, handing back the phone. She stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the familiar neighborhood where she had grown up, where her mother had lived for over 50 years. "This is all so sudden." "I know," May said. "But I think grandmother wanted us to know them. Why else would she leave this for me to find?" Her mother turned, a flash of hurt crossing her face. "Why didn't she leave it for me? I was her daughter." The question hung in the air between them, impossible to answer with certainty. May could only guess at her grandmother's reasons. "Maybe she thought it would be harder for you," May suggested gently. "You grew up with the story of Chen Li Hua from Hong Kong. Your whole identity is tied to that narrative. But for me, it's different. I'm one generation removed." Her mother didn't look convinced, but she nodded slowly. "Maybe." She sat down again, picking up the photograph of the serious man with wire-rimmed glasses and the proud woman with her hand on little Li Min's shoulder. "These are my grandparents. I never even knew their names." "We could ask," May said. "The family in Shanghai might know." For the first time since reading the letter, her mother smiled, a small, sad smile. "Yes. I suppose we could." That evening, they sat together at May's laptop in the kitchen of her grandmother's house. They had agreed to a video call with the family in Shanghai. May had spent an hour setting up a translator app on her phone, unsure how much English the Chinese relatives might speak. As they waited for the connection, her mother fidgeted nervously with the jade pendant that had been her grandmother's, the one she had never taken off. "I've been thinking," she said. "This pendant. Grandmother always said it was a gift from her mother when she left Hong Kong for America. But now, it must have been from her aunt," May finished the thought. "The one who took her to Hong Kong." Her mother nodded. "Or maybe it was from her real mother, given to her the night she fled Shanghai. We'll probably never know for sure." The computer chimed, indicating the incoming call. May looked at her mother, silently asking if she was ready. Her mother took a deep breath and nodded. May clicked to accept the call, and suddenly their kitchen was filled with faces from the other side of the world, faces that somehow looked both strange and familiar at the same time. The elderly man from the photograph sat in the center, surrounded by his children and grandchildren. His eyes lit up when he saw them. To May's surprise, he spoke in clear, if accented, English. "Hello. I am Li Wei, Li Min's cousin. For so many years, we thought she was lost to us forever." His voice caught on the words. "Thank you for finding us." May's mother leaned forward, her hand instinctively reaching toward the screen. "I'm June. Li Min was my mother. I only learned today who she really was." The old man nodded, understanding in his eyes. "She had to forget to survive. Many did in those days. But we never forgot her." As the first tentative conversation began between families separated by decades of silence, May sat back and watched. Her grandmother's secret had been a burden she carried alone for 70 years. Now, in its revelation, it was becoming a bridge across time and distance, connecting lives that had been torn apart by history. The video call stretched into the night. In Shanghai, the morning sun illuminated the faces of their newfound relatives, while in May's grandmother's kitchen, the clock ticked past midnight unnoticed. They were too engrossed in piecing together 70 years of separation to care about the time. Li Wei, despite his age, had a sharp memory. He sat in a comfortable armchair, occasionally leaning forward to speak directly into the camera, his eyes bright with emotion behind wire-rimmed glasses eerily similar to those worn by May's great-grandfather in the old photograph. "Li Min and I were like brother and sister," he explained, his hands moving expressively as he spoke. "Our fathers were brothers who taught at the same university. We lived in houses next to each other, and every morning we would walk to school together." A younger woman sitting beside him, his daughter, who had introduced herself as Ing, translated whenever his English faltered or when he slipped into Mandarin in his excitement. The other family members crowded around, some standing, some sitting on the floor, all eager to be part of this historic reconnection. "What was she like as a child?" May's mother asked, her voice steady but her hands clutching a tissue, ready for tears that might come at any moment. Li Wei smiled, his face crinkling with the memory. "Oh, she was stubborn. So stubborn. And clever. She could read before any of us, and she would correct everyone's pronunciation, even the adults. Her father was very proud of that. He would say, 'My daughter will be a great teacher someday, just like me.'" May's mother nodded, a small laugh escaping through her emotion. "She was like that her whole life. She corrected everyone's grammar until the day she died." There was a moment of shared understanding between them, the recognition of a trait that had persisted through all the changes and disguises. "Tell us about her parents," May prompted. "Our great-grandparents." Li Wei's expression grew serious. "My uncle, Li Min's father, was a professor of literature. He believed in freedom of thought, freedom of expression. In those times, such beliefs became dangerous." He paused, gathering himself. "When they came for him, many of his colleagues were arrested too. My own father was lucky, he taught mathematics, not literature, so they left him alone. But he knew it might only be a matter of time." "Is that why he helped Li Min escape?" May asked. Li Wei shook his head. "Not my father. He had already been warned not to interfere. It was my mother who arranged everything with Li Min's mother. They had been friends since childhood and trusted each other completely. My mother's sister lived in Hong Kong with her husband. They had no children of their own. The plan was for Li Min to go to them and become their daughter." "And her mother?" May's mother asked softly. "What happened to her?" A shadow passed over Li Wei's face. "She stayed behind. She believed her husband would be released eventually, and she wanted to be there when it happened." He looked down at his hands. "He never was released. And after a few years, she disappeared too. We never knew exactly what happened to her. The kitchen fell silent. May looked at her mother, who was staring at the screen with tears now flowing freely down her cheeks. The weight of the tragedy that had shaped their family history hung heavily in the air. It was Ing who broke the silence. But Li Min survived, she said, her voice gentle but firm. And through her, this part of our family survived too. She kept her promise to forget, but she lived a good life, yes? She had a family who loved her. That would have made her parents very happy. May's mother nodded, wiping her tears. Yes, she did. She had a wonderful life. My father adored her. They were married for 53 years before he passed away. Did she ever speak Chinese at home? One of the younger family members asked from the back of the room. Cantonese, not Mandarin, May's mother replied. She always said it was because she was from Hong Kong. She taught me when I was young, but I've forgotten most of it now. She spoke English without any accent at all. She always was good with languages, Li Wei said with a fond smile. Even as a child, she could mimic anyone perfectly. As the conversation continued, more pieces of Li Min's early life emerged. The games she played, the books she loved, the way she would sing to herself while doing homework. Each detail was a precious gift to May and her mother, filling in the blank pages at the beginning of a story they thought they knew by heart. After 2 hours, they reluctantly agreed to end the call, promising to speak again soon. Before disconnecting, Li Wei held up a small wooden box almost identical to the one May had found in her grandmother's dresser. This was her father's, he explained. Each brother had one. Mine came to me from my father. Hers must have been given to her the night she left. Inside mine are old family photographs and letters. I will scan them and send them to you. Thank you, May said, her throat tight with emotion. That would mean so much to us. After the screen went dark, May and her mother sat in silence for a long moment. The kitchen clock ticked loudly in the quiet. Outside, the night was deep and still. Are you okay? May finally asked. Her mother nodded slowly. I keep thinking about all the times I asked her about her childhood, and she would change the subject or tell the same few stories over and over. I always thought she just had a boring childhood or a bad memory. She gave a sad laugh. She was protecting me from knowing she was protecting me. She was protecting everyone, May said. Imagine living with that fear for so long, even after coming to America. Always worried that her past might catch up with her, might put her new family in danger. And then last year, that letter came. Her mother shook her head in wonder. After all that time, to find out her family had been looking for her. That there were people who remembered Li Min, not Chen Li Hua. I can't imagine what that must have felt like for her. May thought about her grandmother, in her final months, quietly corresponding with relatives in China, perhaps afraid to hope that this connection was real, that it was safe. Learning about the parents she had forced herself to forget and the life that had been taken from her. I think, May said carefully, that's why she left the box for me to find. She wanted us to know, but she couldn't bring herself to tell us directly. Maybe she was afraid we would be angry with her for keeping such a huge secret. I could never be angry with her, her mother said fiercely. Never. I just wish. Her voice caught. I just wish I could talk to her one more time, knowing the truth. There are so many questions I want to ask. I know, May said, reaching across the table to take her mother's hand. But maybe we can find some answers from her family, our family, in Shanghai. Her mother squeezed her hand. Our family, she repeated, testing the words. It's strange to think I have cousins I never knew existed. That you have second cousins on the other side of the world. Li Wei looks a lot like grandmother around the eyes, May observed. Did you notice? Yes, her mother said with a small smile. And that young one in the back, the teenager? She has grandmother's chin, that same stubborn set to it. They stayed up until dawn, going through the contents of the wooden box again, but with new understanding. The newspaper clippings about political movements in China took on personal significance. The photographs of places in Shanghai might have been locations important to Li Min's childhood. Everything in the box was a clue to a life they were only beginning to discover. Morning came with difficult decisions. As sunlight streamed through the kitchen windows, May and her mother sat over cups of cooling coffee, debating what to do next. "We need to tell the rest of the family," her mother said, rubbing her tired eyes. Neither of them had slept. Uncle Ray, Aunt Lena, the cousins, they all have a right to know. May nodded slowly. "But how? This isn't exactly something we can just drop in a family group text." "Good morning everyone, by the way, grandmother was actually a political refugee with a completely different identity." Despite their exhaustion, they both laughed, a release of tension that felt necessary after the emotional night they'd just experienced. "Maybe we should have a family gathering," her mother suggested. "Here, at her house. It feels right to tell everyone in the place where she lived." "This weekend?" May asked. "I can help you contact everyone." Her mother hesitated. "Before we do, I think I want to talk to Uncle Ray alone first. He's the oldest. And he and grandmother were always so close. This is going to hit him hard." May understood. Her uncle had been born just 2 years after her grandparents arrived in America. He had known their grandmother longer than anyone. If anyone deserved to hear this news privately, it was him. That afternoon, May's mother called her brother and asked him to come over to their mother's house. She didn't explain why, just said it was important. May offered to leave them alone, but her mother shook her head. "Stay," she said. "You found the letter. You should be part of this." Uncle Ray arrived an hour later, his face creased with concern. At 63, he looked remarkably like their grandfather, the same broad shoulders, the same way of ducking his head slightly when he entered a room, as if constantly worried about hitting the doorframe. "What's going on?" he asked, looking between them. "Is something wrong with the house? Are you selling it?" "No, nothing like that," May's mother assured him. "But we do need to talk. Maybe we should sit down." They moved to the living room, where decades of family gatherings had taken place. How many Thanksgiving dinners, Christmas mornings, and birthday celebrations had this room witnessed? And through them all, their grandmother had carried her secret. May's mother took a deep breath and began. "Ray, we found something yesterday while clearing out Mama's things. A letter, and some other documents. They've changed everything we thought we knew about her." Uncle Ray's expression shifted from concern to confusion. "What do you mean? What kind of letter?" Instead of trying to explain, May's mother handed him the envelope with their grandmother's elegant handwriting across the front. He opened it with the careful precision he brought to everything, a trait he'd inherited from their grandfather, who had been an engineer. May and her mother waited in silence as he read, watching his face for reactions. Unlike her mother's emotional response, Uncle Ray remained stone-faced throughout, only the tightening of his jaw and a slight paleness to his complexion betraying his shock. When he finished, he sat perfectly still for almost a full minute, the letter held loosely in his hands. Finally, he looked up. "Shanghai," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Not Hong Kong." "Yes," May's mother confirmed softly. "And Dad never knew?" "We don't think so. But it's possible he did and kept her secret." Uncle Ray nodded slowly, as if that made sense to him. He would have. If he knew it would protect her, he would have taken that secret to his grave. He looked down at the letter again. "Li Min. My mother's name was Li Min." He said it carefully, testing the sound of it, this new name for the woman who had raised him. We've been in contact with her family in China, May said gently. Her cousin, Li Wei, and his family. We spoke with them last night. That seemed to startle him. You what? You've already talked to them? They've been looking for her for 70 years, May explained. They never forgot her. And they have so many stories about her childhood, about who she was before. Before she had to become someone else to survive, Uncle Ray finished for her. He ran a hand through his silver hair, a gesture so like their grandmother that it made May's chest ache. My God! All these years. He stood up abruptly and walked to the mantelpiece, where family photographs chronicled decades of their shared history. He picked up one of his mother and father on their 50th wedding anniversary. I remember when she got that ancestry test kit from Lena for Christmas 3 years ago, he said. She refused to do it. Said it was an invasion of privacy. We all teased her about being old-fashioned. He set the photograph down carefully. She was protecting herself. Still afraid, after all those years in America. That's what we thought too, May's mother said. The letter from China came not long after that. Someone in the family must have done one of those tests, and it created a distant match. Uncle Ray turned back to them, his expression troubled. Have you told anyone else yet? No, May's mother said. We wanted to tell you first. He nodded, seeming to appreciate that. Good. He returned to his seat, picking up the letter again. I need some time with this. To process it. Of course, May's mother said. We were thinking of having everyone over this weekend, to tell them together. Yes, he agreed. That's the right way to do it. But... He hesitated. Can I see them? The people you talked to in China? We can arrange another call, May offered. I'm sure they'd be happy to talk to you too. Later that evening, after Uncle Ray had left with a copy of the letter and the promise to return the next day, May and her mother sat on the back porch of the house. The garden, which their grandmother had tended so carefully, was beginning to bloom with spring flowers. Do you think she ever wanted to go back? May asked, looking out at the carefully arranged beds of tulips and daffodils. To China, I mean. To see if anyone was still there waiting for her. Her mother considered this. I don't know. She never mentioned it. But she must have thought about it, especially after things opened up in the 1980s. She sighed. I remember when we took that family trip to Hong Kong in 1995. She was so nervous about it, which seemed strange at the time. Now I understand, she was afraid of being recognized, of someone realizing she wasn't who she claimed to be. Even though it had been almost 50 years, May said. Fear like that doesn't just go away, her mother replied. It becomes part of you. The next evening, Uncle Ray returned as promised. But he wasn't alone. With him was his eldest daughter, Lena, who was a history professor at the State University. I hope you don't mind, he said as they entered. I felt I needed Lena's perspective on this. She specializes in 20th century Chinese history. May's mother looked surprised but welcomed her niece with a hug. Of course not. But does she know? Yes, Lena said, her eyes bright with a mixture of academic interest and personal emotion. Dad showed me the letter last night. I've been researching ever since. What happened to grandmother's family was part of a much larger campaign against intellectuals. Thousands of people disappeared during those years. They gathered in the living room again, and Lena opened her laptop, showing them what she had discovered about the period when Li Min had fled China. The timing makes sense, she explained. There was a major crackdown on academics in 1950 to 51. Many were sent to labor camps, others simply vanished from record. But here's the thing, she pulled up a scanned document. I found this in the university archives. It's a list of professors who were purged from Shanghai University in January 1950. Look at the name here. She pointed to a name written in Chinese characters, with an English transliteration beside it, Li Jian. That's her father, Lena said. My great-grandfather. There's an asterisk by his name, which according to this key, means he was classified as a counter-revolutionary element of the highest concern. May felt a chill. This wasn't just family history anymore. It was part of a much larger, much darker historical narrative. What does that classification mean? Her mother asked quietly. Lena's expression was grim. It means he wouldn't have just been sent to a re-education camp. People with that designation usually didn't survive. The room fell silent as they absorbed this information. Their grandmother's desperate flight from China, her lifetime of hiding her identity, it all made terrible sense. The weekend arrived quickly. May spent Saturday morning helping her mother prepare the house for the family gathering. They cleaned rooms that were already spotless, arranged and rearranged chairs in the living room, and prepared far more food than was necessary, all the familiar rituals of anxiety. Do you think we're doing the right thing? Her mother asked as they set out plates in the dining room. Maybe Mama wanted only us to know. Maybe she never intended for everyone to find out. May considered this. I think if she only wanted us to know, she would have been more specific in her letter. She left it for me to find, but she didn't say to keep it secret. She arranged a stack of napkins with careful precision. I think she was tired of secrets, Mom. I think she wanted the truth to be known, but couldn't bring herself to be the one to tell it. By 2 o'clock, cars began to arrive. Uncle Ray and Aunt Judy came first, with their daughters Lena and Penny. Then May's mother's younger sister, Aunt Grace, arrived with her husband and their 3 grown children. The last to arrive was Uncle David, the youngest of the siblings, who flew in from Chicago specifically for this mysterious family meeting. None of them, except for Uncle Ray and Lena, knew why they had been summoned. They gathered in the living room, balancing plates of food on their laps, exchanging theories about the purpose of the gathering. Are you selling the house? Uncle David asked, echoing Uncle Ray's initial concern. Is someone sick? One of the cousins wondered aloud. Maybe it's good news, Aunt Grace suggested hopefully. Maybe someone's getting married. She looked pointedly at May, who shook her head with a small smile. When everyone had settled, May's mother stood before them, clutching the wooden box in her hands. Thank you all for coming on such short notice, she began. What I'm about to tell you is going to come as a shock. It certainly did to me. She took a deep breath. It's about Mama. About who she really was. For the next half hour, she explained everything, the discovery of the letter, the revelation of their grandmother's true identity, the family in Shanghai they'd already spoken with, and Lena's historical research that put it all into context. As she spoke, she passed around the photographs and newspaper clippings from the box. The reactions varied across the room. Aunt Grace wept openly, while Uncle David sat in stunned silence. The younger cousins looked more intrigued than shocked, perhaps because they had less personal memory of their grandmother to reconcile with this new narrative. So grandmother was actually a refugee, said one of the cousins, a law student who worked with immigration cases. A political refugee whose family was targeted by the communist regime. Yes, Lena confirmed. And based on my research, if she had revealed her true identity even after reaching America, she might have put herself at risk during the McCarthy era. Chinese immigrants with any connection to mainland China were heavily scrutinized. So she kept quiet even here, Uncle David said, speaking for the first time. Even in America, she wasn't safe. Not in her mind, at least, May's mother said. The fear must have been deeply ingrained by then. I have a question, Aunt Judy said. She had been married to Uncle Ray for over 30 years and had known their grandmother well. The recipes she always claimed were old Hong Kong family recipes. Were they really? It seemed like such a small detail amid the larger revelations, but the question touched something fundamental about their shared memories. "I asked Li Wei about that," May said. "He said that Shanghai and Hong Kong cooking styles are quite different. So they probably weren't family recipes at all. That red bean soup she made every Chinese New Year," Uncle David said with a sad smile. "She always said her mother taught her how to make it. But it wasn't her mother at all, was it? It must have been her aunt in Hong Kong." These small revelations, the recipes, the stories, the traditions they had all grown up with, seemed to affect the family more deeply than the larger historical narrative. It was in these intimate details that they felt the weight of their grandmother's deception most personally. "I don't think we should think of it as deception," Lena said, seeming to read the mood in the room. "She did what she had to do to survive. And then she did what she thought she needed to do to protect her new family." "I agree," said Uncle Ray. "And remember, she was only 8 years old when she had to become someone else. At that age, being told to forget who you are, to become a different person, that kind of trauma stays with you." The conversation continued through the afternoon and into the evening. Family members shared memories of their grandmother, now examining them through this new lens of understanding. Stories that had seemed odd or inconsistent suddenly made sense. Her refusal to discuss certain topics, her occasional unexplained sadness on certain anniversaries, her insistence that they never take their freedom for granted. As the evening progressed, May set up her laptop on the dining room table and connected to a video call with Shanghai. It was early morning there, but Li Wei and several family members were waiting to meet the extended family. One by one, the American relatives introduced themselves to their Chinese counterparts. Li Wei beamed at each new face, occasionally commenting on resemblances he saw to family members long gone. "You," he said, pointing to Uncle David through the screen. "You have your grandfather's smile. Li Min's father. The same way it starts on the right side of your mouth." Uncle David touched his face, as if trying to feel this connection to a man he had never known existed until today. As the call continued, Li Wei's grandson, a man in his 30s named June, joined the conversation. He spoke excellent English and had been helping to organize the family documents on their side. "We have been scanning the photographs and letters that we have preserved," he explained. "Many are from before Li Min left. Some are of her parents, and some are of her as a small child." "We'd love to see those," May's mother said eagerly. "Of course. But we have also found something else that may interest you greatly," June continued. "In my great-grandfather's papers, there are several letters that Li Min's mother wrote after her daughter was sent away. She managed to smuggle them to her sister-in-law, hoping they would somehow reach her daughter in Hong Kong." A hush fell over the room on both sides of the world. "Did they?" Aunt Grace asked. "Did grandmother ever get those letters?" June shook his head. "No. By the time they reached Hong Kong, Li Min had already been told to forget her past. Her aunt thought it would be too dangerous to give them to her. So she kept them, and eventually they found their way back to our side of the family." "What do they say?" Uncle David asked, leaning toward the screen. June looked to Li Wei, who nodded his permission. "They are a mother's letters to her daughter," June said simply. "Full of love, and hope that one day they would be reunited." He paused. "In the last one, dated 1956, she seems to know that her time is running out. She writes that even if they never meet again in this life, her greatest comfort is knowing that her daughter is safe and has the chance to live freely." Through the screen, they watched as Li Wei wiped away tears. On their side, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. 6 decades later, across time and space, the message had finally reached its intended audience, not Li Min herself, but the family she had created, the living legacy of the child who escaped. 6 months passed. Spring turned to summer, and summer faded into autumn. The shock of their discovery gradually transformed into a new understanding of their family history, a richer, more complex narrative than the one they had always known. May stood at the airport gate, passport in hand, watching her family members gather around her. They had spent months planning this journey, a pilgrimage of sorts to a homeland none of them had known was theirs until half a year ago. "Do you have the letters?" her mother asked, checking her carry-on bag for the 5th time that morning. "Yes, Mom. They're safe," May assured her. The precious cargo, the original letter from their grandmother and the newly translated copies of her mother's letters that June had sent them, were carefully preserved in acid-free sleeves and tucked securely in May's travel document folder. Not everyone could make the trip. Uncle David had work commitments he couldn't break. 2 of the cousins were in the middle of college semesters. But 8 of them had arranged to go: May, her mother, Uncle Ray and Aunt Judy, Aunt Grace, Lena, and 2 other cousins. Over the months of planning, they had remained in regular contact with their Chinese relatives. Weekly video calls had become a new family tradition. Li Wei rarely missed one, eager to share more memories of his childhood with Li Min. His grandson June had become their main point of contact, helping to arrange their accommodations in Shanghai and planning their itinerary. "I still can't believe we're doing this," Aunt Grace said, joining May at the window overlooking the runway. "If someone had told me a year ago that I'd be flying to Shanghai to meet relatives I never knew existed." "I know," May agreed. "It's still hard to wrap my head around sometimes." Their boarding call came, and as they filed onto the plane, May thought about how much had changed since she first found that wooden box in her grandmother's dresser drawer. Her mother had retired early from her job to focus on learning Mandarin, determined to be able to communicate with their Chinese relatives without always relying on translation. Lena had shifted her academic research to focus specifically on the period when her grandmother had fled China, combining family history with historical analysis. And May herself had started writing everything down, recording the family's reactions, transcribing the video calls with Li Wei, documenting this remarkable journey of discovery. "She would be proud of us," her mother had said the night before, as they finished their packing. For finding each other. For completing the circle. May wasn't so sure. Would their grandmother be proud, or would she be frightened to know they were traveling to the country she had fled in terror? Would she approve of them embracing a history she had worked so hard to forget? But then she remembered the letter, and why her grandmother had left it to be found. "I cannot bear the thought of this story dying with me," she had written. Perhaps this journey was exactly what she had hoped for, even if she couldn't bring herself to make it while she was alive. 14 hours later, they landed in Shanghai. The airport was a gleaming monument to modernity, nothing like the Shanghai of their grandmother's childhood. They moved through customs in a daze of jet lag and anticipation. And then, in the arrival hall, they saw them, a group of people holding a banner with both their Chinese and American family names written side by side. Li Wei sat in a wheelchair at the center of the group, his face beaming as he spotted them. The meeting was a blur of embraces, tears, and introductions too numerous to absorb in their exhausted state. June and his wife insisted they all come to their home for a welcome meal before heading to their hotel. "We have prepared something special," he explained as they loaded into several cars. "A meal with dishes from both Shanghai and America. A bridge between our families." Their jet lag momentarily forgotten, they arrived at a beautiful apartment in a high-rise building with views of the city skyline. Inside, a long table had been set with an elaborate feast. At each place setting was a small gift box. "Please," Li Wei said, gesturing for them to open the boxes before they ate. Inside each one was a jade pendant, similar in design to the one May's grandmother had always worn. "These are replicas of a family heirloom," June explained. Li Min's mother wore one like this. When she sent her daughter away, she gave her the original to remember her by. "We believe it is the same one that your grandmother wore her whole life." May's mother clutched the pendant her grandmother had left her, the one she'd been wearing every day since her mother died. "Yes," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "This one. She never took it off." Li Wei nodded, tears in his eyes. "Then it has come full circle. Her mother's love, carried with her across oceans and decades. And now, we are all together again." The meal that followed was like none they had experienced before, dishes they recognized from their grandmother's cooking, but subtly different, closer to their original Shanghai roots. There were also foods they had never tasted, traditional recipes that Li Wei's wife had prepared especially for the occasion. As they ate, they shared stories. June had prepared photographs of places they would visit during their stay, the neighborhood where Li Min had lived as a child, the building that had once housed the university where her father taught, the temple where her mother had prayed for her safe journey. Most of these places had changed dramatically over 70 years, but some landmarks remained, connecting past to present, just as this meal connected two branches of a family long separated by history and geography. After dinner, when the conversation had quieted and the younger children had fallen asleep in corners of the apartment, Li Wei asked Mei to bring him the letters, the ones from Li Min's mother that had never reached her. "I would like to read them aloud," he said. "Here, with both families present. It feels right that these words should finally be heard by her descendants." They gathered in the living room, the Shanghai skyline glittering beyond the windows. Li Wei's hands trembled slightly as he held the first letter, the paper delicate with age. "My beloved daughter," he read in Mandarin, while June translated softly into English. "Today is your 9th birthday. I wonder if your aunt has made you the sweet rice cakes I always made for you on this day. I wonder if you remember how you would always save the last bite for your father." As the words flowed around them, Mei closed her eyes. She could almost see it, a young mother writing by candlelight, pouring her heart onto paper, hoping against hope that her words would somehow reach her child. A little girl in Hong Kong, learning to answer to a new name, trying to forget the parents she had left behind. And decades later, an elderly woman receiving a letter from China and finally allowing herself to remember. Li Wei's voice broke as he reached the end of the final letter. "Remember that wherever you go, whoever you become, you carry us with you. In your eyes, which are your father's eyes. In your stubborn spirit, which is mine. In your name, which I pray you will one day reclaim. You are Li Min, daughter of Li Jian and Song Mei, and nothing, no revolution, no ocean, no passage of time, can ever change that truth." When he finished reading, the room fell silent. Then, softly at first, Mei's mother began to speak. "All these years," she said, "I thought I knew her. But I was only seeing part of the picture. Now I feel like I'm finally meeting my mother for the first time." "No," Li Wei said gently. "You knew her true self. The name changed, the country changed, but the heart remained the same. The love she had for you, that was all Li Min, even when she called herself Chen Li Hua." As the night deepened around them, the two families, separated for 70 years by politics, geography, and fear, continued to bridge the gap, one story at a time. And somewhere, Mei liked to think, her grandmother was finally at peace, her secret revealed, her two worlds reconciled at last, her full self remembered.